will, excuse me, begin the Planning Committee meeting of Akron City Council, if that's okay with the clerk. All right. I'd like to ask for a roll call.
Fusco.
Aye.
Kamer.
Aye.
Connor. Baylor.
Aye.
Mosley. All members are present except for Connor and Mosley. You do have a quorum, so you can get started.
Okay. Thank you. She's here. I know Tara's here, but perhaps in the back. I don't believe that I can find my agenda. I apologize. There we go. Very good. Number 9, well, on the old list of legislation, we don't have a public hearing today, but we do have the, I thought we were going to get a substitute in reference, I guess that's forthcoming, reference to the capital budget. Yes, so there is a capital budget substitute coming in. I believe, I'm not certain exactly what the number is going to be, but I believe it's going to be like $50,000.
We're looking at $50,000.
$50,000 adjustment within the capital budget. It's going to be paid to a consultant to study placing sidewalks on Mull Avenue between White Pond and Hawkins on the north side. So that's what the adjustment to the budget will be this evening. I will poll the committee once we get that in hand this evening at 7 o'clock, and we will, I'll ask for a vote at that time. However, at this time, what I'd like to do is ask if there's anyone here with any questions whatsoever, just in reference to the overall capital budget at this time. If there's like I said, what we'll do is we'll pull the committee tonight, and we'll ask for, you know, a recommendation from the committee, but short of that, we'll just go ahead and take time during committee today. Should there be any questions or comments? I'm not hearing any. So what we'll do then is now move into the new list of legislation. And Sarah Biviano, could you please read that number 9 in under new list?
Mm-hmm. Item number 9 is a substitute offered as an amendment, ordinance authorizing the execution of a development agreement with White Pond Reserve LLC or its designee, providing for the sale and development of property within the White Pond Frank Boulevard Urban Renewal Plan area, finding such property is not needed for any public use and related findings, and declaring an emergency.
Yeah, so the amendment is very, very simple. We had a couple, I think, numbers juxtaposed in the legislation as far as parcel numbers go, and there was one that was inadvertently not included in the initial legislation, so this is making that change.
Any questions or comments? I'm not going to ask for a vote today. We're going to ask to refer this item, of course. But is there any questions or comments in reference to this proposal? From any committee members? Okay, I see Mr. Malik's hand is up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the members of the administration. I have a couple questions, but first I just had general comment. We did get an email today about the petition that some residents had circulated, and it appears that over 600 people, including 470 Akron residents and 139 Ward 8 residents, so that's important for me, have signed a petition asking council to slow down and take more time in engaging the community around these discussions. Last Tuesday, I think almost all of us here in this room were at the community meeting that the residents held. There were close to 200 participants, many of whom had concerns about the use of the land for development, including traffic concerns, concerns about the impact on wetlands and on the environment more broadly, on the economic impact of the property and the development. I do want to say thank you to the members of the administration who were there, including the mayor. I know that it was really appreciated by the members of the public and also by myself. But I think, from my perspective, some of the concerns that were shared and have been shared over the last few weeks and months have been answered. Some of them can be answered more fully with more time. We just got some updated information about traffic today. But I do believe that what is clear that there's a substantial number of residents, particularly in Ward 8 throughout, who have deep concerns about whether this is the best use of the property. And I think that it would be the best course of action for us to listen to them and to try to really engage them in continued discussion about whether this is the best use of the property. And I really hope that we would not rush to take a vote on this next week. I know we've had a number of discussions on this point, so I won't belabor it. We did have just a couple questions on some of the information shared today, Mr. Volman. I know there was a notation that in the development agreement, the total retail square footage will be restricted to 30,000 square feet. Is that, what was the change, what was the amount before?
It was 60,000 in the original.
Okay, and so is that, how will the layout change as a result of that? Will it be fewer buildings, or what do you?
Members of the committee, the change in the square footage for commercial, he's going to take a look at some other uses for those ground floors, and it won't be commercial. He's going to look at the residential. Right now, those buildings have residential above and commercial below, so there may be a mix a little bit, and there also may be a reduction in the size of those buildings up front. In order to accommodate that reduction of 60 to 30,000.
Okay, and was that a request from the administration, or was something they brought forward, or how did this kind of come about?
We had some discussions with the developer on, what it's going to look like, and he said, he didn't want to put himself out there just in case if the space didn't get rented either or leased. So he would rather start with a lower number up front and in the development agreement. So he's got a better shot, to get that lease to a breakfast place, coffee or whatever, right off the bat.
Okay. So if he would need to expand or change some of that use back to retail, that would require changing the development agreement?
He would have to come back to us, and we would have to come back to council. That's correct.
Okay. On the traffic, there was a report from AMATS that was shared. Thank you, Mr. Volman. One of the things that I've heard a lot from Ward 8 residents is a concern that with the added traffic, there would be a significant use of like Frank and Lancaster and other streets to kind of go over to Shockalog and access Fair Lawn that way. It seems like from the study that that's not a significant concern from AMATS. Is that a fair way of characterizing that study?
That's correct.
Okay.
Sorry.
The second question, and this may be beyond the scope of the study, but I know that a lot of the concerns from residents have surrounded the further south along White Pond at the 77 White Pond Mall intersection. It seems like the study did not deal with that area. Is that correct?
Is Jason?
Actually,
With the limits of the study?
Good afternoon. From what I understand, it did look at the White Pond corridor to the freeway, but it's my understanding that AMATS felt that, looking at the timing of traffic signals and the turning movements of different cars to the different ramps was kind of beyond the planning level look that they took at it.
Okay. I appreciate that. I just want to underline that that is one of the consistent concerns that I hear. And apart from this development here from residents and have experienced for a long time firsthand, as I know many of us have, are there active, I know there have been some discussions with ODOT, I guess where is the planning department on And I know there was some discussion previously with the service director as well about discussions about the bridge there at White Pond and 77. I guess, what are the current discussions within the administration about that area?
Again, I don't know that, I don't have the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, it's the, traffic engineering is not technically under planning. So, I mean, we can have that, we can figure that out and get that back to you, but I don't know what. I mean, trying to figure out optimal signalization is always part of what the traffic engineer's office is doing. So, they can look at, and would look at whatever situation would be occurring due to, additional traffic. But I don't know of a specific negotiation that.
Yeah, and if I could speak to that a little bit more, I mean, there are different methods of optimizing traffic signal timing. So part of it would involve, there's 2 signal heads, one at each set of ramps, and having it where they can basically talk to one another more effectively and one signal sensing how many cars are coming off the freeway and then dynamically changing the timing. So I like Sean said, I don't know the specifics of exactly what Mr. Lupica plans on looking at, but I just wanted to communicate that that type of analysis can be done, and that for most traffic signal systems, there is some ability to optimize the timing. So it's possible that traffic improvements can be made without, adding lanes or buying new traffic signals. I think that's just something until Mr. Lupica looks at it, we wouldn't know that for sure, but it is possible that that can be done.
No, I appreciate that, Mr. Segedy, and I think I can also send a more specific question via email to your point, Mr. Volman. But I think what I was referring to, I think there were previously some mention of possibly looking at expanding that bridge there at 77 and White Pond. But to your point, Mr. Segedy, maybe there are other things beyond that. And obviously, that would be very expensive. The final question I had was about, Mr. Volman, you had some language about the economic and tax implications. I think you mentioned that it would be roughly $8.8 million of benefit to APS over 30 years, and that it would be about $100,000 in income tax yearly. I guess, is there any data available? What informs those assumptions? Like how many residents, how many retail employees, that kind of thing?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I put together this analysis. The $100,000 a year in income tax is basically under 2 assumptions, one of which is the number of employees at the retail space based on 30,000 square feet, and the other is based on the household income that's anticipated for residents there, and the assumption that about 20% of them will be new residents that do not live currently, nor do they work in the city of Akron.
And how many employees do you anticipate?
I believe it was roughly 1 per 1,000 square feet.
Okay. And then what do you assume the household income will be of those residents?
The household income is simply the rent, proposed rent, divided by 33%, assuming 1/3 of their gross income goes into their housing.
Okay. So is there a specific number or a range?
The rents range, I believe, from $1,600 to $2,000.
Okay, so it'd be 3 times that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Nancy, Helen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions about the revisions to the development agreement beyond what were just covered by my colleague. Mr. Volman, we had a brief conversation about the inclusion of a commitment in the development agreement for the developer to pay $15,000 into the tree fund. I found the information that you shared with me very helpful and was hopeful that you might share it with the whole group.
I don't have John here for the specifics on what all goes into a community tree planting event. But the $15,000 itself is enough to purchase 40 trees. And through our normal, his normal process of community tree planting events, we think that that would lead to 100 or so trees being planted at some point in time. due to, the commitment of the 15 and then what we do in order to, do these events.
You can
But
actually
John
leverage
I can
that
get more
into more.
information from John.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And my second question, I'm not sure if it's for Mr. Beckert or for Ms. Collins, but this is a provision that the city will approve an environmental risk mitigation plan prior to closing. And I was hoping we might have some additional detail on that.
Yeah, the risk mitigation plan will be developed by his consultant, and it's really based on, because there are some unknowns in the soil out there, some contaminants. So you have to, first of all, protect the workers and also the residents. And really, the workers are covered by OSHA laws, so it'll be developed around that. If we just did it down at Firestone Park when we put in the roadway there for the development, and the contractor came up with the risk mitigation plan based on what the soil had in it to protect his workers, and it worked very well. So they will show that to us. We will review it. We will have a consultant review it, make sure it covers everything we needed, and for the workers as well as the residents. And there's a lot of things that he's already got built into his plan that's going to protect the residents.
And the workers being both the construction, the workers on the construction side of the project as well as those working in the long term in the facility.
Appreciate that. One follow-up question. I had a communication this morning which I've shared with a few folks, expressing concern about retention ponds, and for clarity for the community and for all of us, is there presently a retention pond planned for this site?
There is not, no. He is going to take his stormwater, and generally it will be encased. Generally, the contractor or the developer has to use what they call a pre- and post-development design, which means he cannot generate any more stormwater that's actually on the site right now, undeveloped. So whether he has to detain it in a tank underground before it goes into a pipe out into the street, into the storm sewer, which means all the contaminants and everything else in the water, according to EPA, fall out before it hits our system.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Any other questions? Tara Mosley?
Sean, I'm not sure if you can answer this, or Brad, but there was a question, I don't see anywhere in this agreement, about there being some active wells on the site. Did we check to see if they were capped, if they're dried up, and who they belong to?
We have found more information out on the wells. I believe there are some that are still active.
Emily has that
Emily has that
information.
information. All right.
There are 3 active wells. There are 3 active wells. I think the mapping that Councilman Lombardo was referring to when he thought there might be 8 wells was showing permits that have not been utilized and are likely now expired. We believe they are expired. And there may have been some entry and exit markings on the map that Councilman Lombardo was looking at. But you'll see in the development agreement that royalties are split half by 50-50. The developers would get 50% of the royalties, and we would maintain 50%.
So who owns the wells, and are they going to be capped? I'm not concerned about the royalty part. I'm wondering, when are we going to cap those wells?
So they won't be capped if they are active, and they are active, right? So they are producing oil and gas right now, and we are obtaining some of the royalties because they are on our land. So they are leased to another entity, obviously, the oil and gas entity. Is that your question?
Who are they leased to?
Yeah, I need to, I
yeah,
can get you that
we will
information.
pull that up.
Yeah, we'll pull it up. I apologize.
Yeah.
I don't have it in front of me.
And it is the developer's plan to eventually cap these once the leases are up. He would prefer that they're not on the site.
Okay. Linda Mobian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I spoke with Mr. Gaffney at the meeting, he indicated that he was ready to move forward with his project as soon as January. So what I want to know, if this agreement is passed, how soon would we be able to let the residents know the full plan of the project? I live not very far, a couple streets over, and there are a number of residents there who were not even aware of this and did raise some concerns. So if this agreement passes tonight or next week or whatever, how soon would Mr. Gaffney's company start moving on the project? He's, you know, as I said, he said he was ready to go in January.
As far as the timing, he would have a period of time to finalize all of his due diligence, to determine that the property is indeed suitable for testing or for construction. I think it is, I am going to look it up. The inspection period is defined, but I think he has 30 days after the inspection period in which to close. The inspection period is 30 days after entering into the agreement. So he could move as early as 30 days after this agreement is passed and signed to close on the property. He would then take ownership of the property and then would begin so yes, if this is passed, in the next couple weeks, January would be, I think, a legitimate starting date for the project.
So when could we have a meeting with the citizens again to talk about the final project and what it's going to look like and all the other unanswered questions that were raised at the meeting?
I think the submittal of plans will occur before any building permits are allowed to be issued. They have to submit their final plans for review. And as far as unanswered questions, I feel like we've answered the questions that have been proposed to us, so I guess we can talk about what specific questions are not answered, but I feel that we have answered the questions that the citizens have put forward.
Now, there were a number of questions raised the other night that you didn't have the answers to. Now, if you have answers since then, perhaps we need to have another meeting so that people can hear specifically what the plan is and have their questions answered. I'm not suggesting that, I know there was some concern about changing the entire project to something totally different and other credits and funds that they can research and get. And I think there was some question about that. But should we be having another meeting shortly after Christmas or before? Because I think our last council meeting, I believe, is the 19th. Am I correct, Sarah?
Our last meeting is the 12th.
Oh, the 12th? Next week?
Correct.
Oh, I assume we had another meeting after that. Okay.
I guess what I'd say is that we have explained what this project is. And final drawings and improvement plans will come in at a later date. Those are public records, those can be shared. As far as I don't think do something different is a question. So I don't know that, again, I think we have answered the questions and to my knowledge, the concerns about the wetlands, the species, the trees, the traffic, and I don't see lingering questions out there that would necessitate another meeting.
So, are you prepared to talk about this completely tonight at the meeting at 7 o'clock?
We were not planning on discussing tonight. No, I think they were looking at potentially more next week.
We're taking time on this, Ms. Amobian.
Okay, but the questions that were raised will be answered by next week.
I guess I would ask that you let me know what questions are still lingering out there, because I feel like we have answered the questions.
Okay, I will get back this evening then.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm trying to get to people who haven't. Gert Wilms had her hand up.
The only thing Gert Wilms, on behalf of Chief of Staff for Mayor Horrigan, we did have a chance to speak with the organizers at the meeting. They were going to provide us that feedback. We have not received that. So if anybody has that and is willing to share with us, we definitely would like to take a look at it.
Thank you, Russ Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to say thank you to those that came out, the administration, Mr. Bowman, Gert Wims, Mayor, my colleagues on council, Councilman Kamer, Councilwoman Amobian, Mosley, Councilman Ballard, Councilwoman Howland. I think I got everybody. If I forgot anybody, forgive me. Because it was very important to the constituents that were there. And this is what I want to share with the administration, and I want to share with council. When we say that we are going to collaborate, it's not, oh, we're going to gather together, but we're still going to do it our way. Collaboration means we walk together. As I shared with some of my colleagues, some of the folks in the administration, there's an African proverb that says if you want to go fast, go by yourself. Okay. But if you want to go far, if you want to build trust, go together. Last Tuesday was a beautiful opportunity for us to build trust. I think every one of you that were there understand that because you heard from those folks that were there. So what does that mean? That means, to Ms. Wilms' point, yes, we have to wait for the constituents to get that information back to us. It hasn't been a week yet. I believe we will still get it today. We know how, with a paid staff, we know how tough it is to get information out because sometimes we don't get it till just before the meeting.
Okay, Mr. Neal, can we stick to the issue itself and not, I understand we want to talk about the process and how many meetings we can have.
Mr. Fusco?
But what I'd like to ask that you could please, if you could, just stick to what's right in front of us right now, which is the agreement. And that's what we're talking about at this moment.
Mr. Fusco, sir, what I'm trying to say is this is what's directly in front of us. This is what's directly in front of us. We're talking about a different process.
The process, we're not talking about process, we're talking about the legislation in front of us.
This is what I would ask, sir, that you just respect the process. I heard very loud and clear the concern of only having a certain window of time to cut down the trees. There is no way we could do this process justice and do justice to the citizens trying to vote on this by December 12th. I still have questions that need to be answered. Because if, we're not sure, but if this causes any kind of increased water volume in that area, the folks in Delia Estates are going to be flooded out. So this is what I ask. Let's get the answers, we'll get the stuff from the citizens, but there's no way we can start thinking about voting this until at the earliest, January.
Okay,
And
thank you.
we don't come back until the 9th. And then we have a day off. So this will give us, and to do this process the right way, we have to have another meeting, to Councilwoman Amobian's point, with the citizens.
Okay, thank you.
Now let me be clear, I still stand in favor of the project,
Sarah,
but I have questions that, the citizens have brought to my concern
5 minutes.
that need to be addressed.
Okay, thank you, sir, for that. Mr. Volleman.
I guess I would ask, as I said before, please, if you can email me, my team, the questions that you still have remaining, we will look at them and address them.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Most definitely,
Thank you.
sir.
Okay,
But
very
part
good.
of it is.
Please stick to the issue.
I emailed everyone the list of concerns from Ms. Miranda Florent, who is the graduate assistant. Her notes last Friday, I believe it was, last Thursday or Friday. And as has been stated, the citizens will get us their summary of the last meeting, hopefully by this evening. And I'll get a chance to look at them and get all of that to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Nancy Holland, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since really what we're talking about today is the development agreement itself, I just want to get my arms around
talk about that.
something. And that is, first of all, to sort of recap, I think it's important to note that there have been some substantive changes that I think are responsive to a number of concerns. The retail space footprint has now been reduced by 50%. That there are, other items in here, including a tree budget, which is music to this Ward 1 residents' ears. And I look forward to hearing some further, I guess, development of what we can do with that from Mr. Malish when he's available. But I do want to follow up on a question that Councilwoman Mosley posed, because I think it is, even with my eyeballs that are somewhat trained to read legal agreements, it's less than clear. It is my understanding, and I'm not an expert in the field of oil and gas, but it is my understanding that these wells do have a lifespan, that even though productive now, and even though the development agreement addresses the sharing and payment of royalties and the treatment of the existing leases, my concern, and I think Councilwoman Mosley's concern, is that we know that frequently these wells can require some pretty comprehensive maintenance or capping, and that my casual research reveals that that can come in at roughly $50,000 per well. So my concern on behalf of the citizens is that if we do have an intention that this becomes the responsibility of the developer, should we be very specific? Again, it's been 1,000 years since I attended law school, but luckily, property law hasn't changed much in 500 years, and where it touches or concerns real property, it really should be in writing. That's it.
Thank you for that, Councilwoman Holland. And we are happy to share with you the actual lease where bonding and capping requirements, including rules of the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, current rules of the Ohio Department of Natural Resources require that plugging and capping. So I'm happy to share that with you shortly after this meeting.
Thank you so much.
Okay, very good. I'd like to entertain a motion that we refer this item.
Motion to refer.
Is there a second? I'll second. Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Against, the ayes have it. Number 10, Ms. Viviano.
Thank you.
Item number 10 is an ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent to enter into an agreement or agreements without the formality of advertising for bids with Gordon Food Service for the purchase of food and related materials for use in Lock 3, authorizing payment therefore and declaring an emergency.
Yes, thank you. Someone here for this?
Yeah, I don't know if, I saw Katie on earlier. I do not see her on right now, but this is additional food, for Lock 3's purposes. Oh, here we go.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, legislation is a formality. Lot 3 has a purchase order for up to $40,000 with Gordon Food Service, and they needed to add more money to that purchase order. So that is why we have that submitted as legislation today.
Very good, thank you. Unfortunately, my laptop isn't working, or how much is it that we're asking for? Or is this the?
Increase the amount to 65,000. So by, I believe, The current purchase order is 40,000, so it would increase the amount to 65.
Okay, 25,000 additional. Okay, very good. Questions or comments from any committee members? Any council members? Is the consent agenda okay, or is this a rush thing? Do we have something coming up this weekend that we got to deal with, or?
Well, we're running out of hot chocolate, so
Uh-oh,
it's kind of an emergency.
That sounds like one. Is there a recommendation for suspension of the rules? There is a recommendation from Ms. Mosley. Is there a second out there? I'll second it. Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Against? Thank you. The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item.
Item number 11 is an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of a development agreement with FIDC 123 LLC, providing for the redevelopment of the property located at 2003 Buckholzer Boulevard and declaring an emergency.
Yeah, so let me, just real quick, then I'll turn over to David. These next two pieces are related. One is a development agreement, one is a TIF ordinance, with a new development, a new building out at Chapel Hill, and the money would be used to water line, water system, water main improvements out in that area. And it's the Tractor Supply building that has gone up, and if you have specific questions about it, David is here too.
Yes, council previously passed a conditional use for the new Tractor Supply back early in 2022. They've erected the building rather quickly. Part of the permitting process indicated that our water mains in that area are at or near capacity, so we're looking to expand and improve the water system. This development agreement allows a revenue source to do that, as does the accompanying TIF legislation.
That's via TIF, and that's $85,000?
The $85,000 would go to the developers of the Tractor Supply store. They had to put in a special fire suppression system and pump because we did not have the pressure and flow necessary for what they were trying to do.
Right.
So it's to help offset some of that cost.
But the TIF is going to address the, excuse me, the water pressure, I understand, so on and so forth, with regards to the whole site, is that correct?
That is correct, and it'll address the entire Chapel Hill redevelopment area, which is basically the old Chapel Hill, as well as the neighboring blocks in that vicinity, and part of, I believe, what's called the Talmadge High Water District.
Right, yeah, the tower, right.
Yeah, there's various improvements over there that could be done, and this is a revenue stream for those.
Okay. And how much do you have that?
I believe our rough estimates are around $500,000 to $700,000.
Okay, but this is going to be also in support of the entire development, which is...
Yes, and...
which we have a lot at stake, right?
Mr. Beckert is going to speak a little bit about what's currently going on in the Chapel Hill redevelopment area.
Very good, thank you. I was asking for that. Right, thank you. A nice update. And for anyone who gets an opportunity while out there shopping, perhaps for a holiday or something, drive by this site that we approved. It's really good to see some new construction on that site. And this is, they're busily working over there. So, Mr. Beckert.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. When we passed the development agreement a few years ago for Chapel Hill Mall with ICP, you know, we had great expectations, and they're actually coming to fruition right now. The old Sears store is now a millwork, which is owned by Famous Supply. A few weeks ago, you passed legislation for Dry Verge to do a complete consolidation, and they are going to take a large portion of the center of the mall. And then on the northern portion of the mall, you have a storage, self-storage warehouse, which used to be the old Macy's. And some of these outbuildings, like this, Tractor Supply, and the old Sears Automotive, they're also going to redevelop those areas too, either into commercial, or there's a possibility, or there was a plan at one time to do some residential there. So this is really coming to fruition with the mall redevelopment.
Well, you know, those out parcels are still in play, really on Britton Road, as well as the on the street here. I can't think of the name of it. Buckholzer. Thank you, yep. Buckholzer. Yep. Yeah, and this is a perfect example of that, how they can still be in play. But then again, the mall itself is used, you know, for that, and it's great to see that we haven't had to have a dinosaur out there just decaying away like we have seen before. So this is a good thing. Right. Is there any questions from any committee members or any council members? I'm going to recommend to give everybody an opportunity consent agenda, so everybody gets an opportunity to review, you know, and if there is a concern that can be, you know, addressed next week. So consent agenda, okay?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there a recommendation for consent?
Motion for consent.
Thank you. I'll second. Thank you. All those in favor of consent agenda signify by saying aye. 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 Against? Thank you. The ayes have it. Number 12, I believe. Is that right?
Item number 12 is an ordinance declaring certain improvements to real property located in the Chapel Hill Mall redevelopment area to be a public purpose and exempt from real property taxation, providing for the collection of service payments in lieu of taxes and the deposit of those service payments in the appropriate fund, providing for the payment of a portion of the service payments to the Akron Public School District, all pursuant to Ohio Revised Code sections 5709.41 to 5709.43, the Act, and declaring an emergency.
And this would be the TIF
The
piece
TIF
to go
piece,
along with.
right, exactly, very good. Any questions or comments? Okay, is there a recommendation for consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of consent agenda signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. Against? Thank you. The ayes have it. And with that, this Planning Committee meeting of Akron City Council is adjourned, short of there's a question from the clerk.
Yes, you did not approve the minutes of the previous meeting at the beginning of
thank you.
this meeting. Would you be able to do that before adjourning?
Yes, we would. Is there a
Thank you.
motion to accept the minutes of the last meeting? Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Against? The ayes have it. Thank you, Sarah Viviano. And with that, we are adjourned. Thanks.
Our next committee meeting of the day will be the Rules Committee, and it will begin at 2 o'clock. Those committee members are Freeman, Fusco, Amobian, Connor, and Malik. Again, that's the Rules Committee, and it will begin at 2 o'clock.
It took some.